SA today, and we continue with our special elections coverage this week, and right now a labour issue. Last week President Cyril Ramaphosa warned employers not to prevent their workers from voting in Wednesday's general election, saying that government will not hesitate to take action against employers who prevent their employees from exercising their democratic right. Well, Labour Federation COSATU says that it's already receiving reports from workers that some employers are insisting that they come to work despite the voting day being declared a public holiday. So just what are the rights of workers on election day? Well, to give us a view, I'm now joined by employment and labour law expert Osborne Molatudi. Thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you, Peter.
All right, so what is the law? Do people have to come to work tomorrow? Can employers say, Osborne, you must come to work tomorrow? What's the situation?
From a legal perspective, the answer is pretty straightforward. In terms of the relevant section in the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, no employer may force an employee to work on a public holiday without that employee's agreement. So that's your starting point. And secondly, tomorrow's day has been declared a public holiday, and therefore any employer who would wish to have his employees at work would have done so with the agreement with those employees or with their trade unions.
So without an agreement, an employee can just say, look, it's a public holiday, I'm not coming to work tomorrow. So I suppose they've had time to think of a plan. So a lot of the shops will be open, petrol stations. They would have had some kind of an agreement with their employer to come to work and maybe vote during the day for a couple of hours, come back. I suppose those kinds of things.
Indeed. I mean, bear in mind that the date, 8 May 2019, was not announced by the President yesterday. I mean, all of us knew a long time ago that on this particular day we will be exercising our constitutional right to vote. And therefore, one would expect that by this time, employers and employees and those employees who belong to trade unions and those trade unions, they would have made arrangements long time ago, concluded appropriate agreements. Everyone would know who's coming to work tomorrow, who's not coming, who's taking what shift, etc. It's not something that employers can wake up one morning and say, I need you tomorrow, etc. However, there are exceptions. The exception is only the work which is not expected to be completed. Let's say the work starts at 10 p.m. today or midnight, etc. Let's say surgery in a hospital, etc. And that work carries on to the following day. There may be exception that an employer may ask the employee to continue working and perhaps give them a day off later in the day to go and exercise their constitutional right.
What are the consequences for employers that force their workers to come to work tomorrow?
The consequences will be severe. I mean, the employees can report those employers to the Department of Labor, and they will have to then dispatch the inspectors to go and check if indeed they breach the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, and there are consequent fines. But I doubt if employers will carelessly or recklessly just require employees to come and work on a public holiday on such an important day without having obtained an agreement either from the employees themselves or from their trade unions.
All right, so employees, what should they do if their employer says, I want you at work tomorrow? What's the best way to have this conversation so that if it does get to a point where it's taken further, they've done the right things?
You know, one of the rationale for requiring employees to work on a public holiday is because the employer, for operational reasons, wants to have a continuous business, so that the more the business continues to run, the chances are that the bottom line, the revenue will grow, and that will create probably more jobs. On the other hand, you have employees who may want to earn an extra income, and therefore if they work on a public holiday, they know that there's a double rate or even an increased higher rate if they work on a public holiday, and also if that day doesn't fall on a normal day that they would be required to work. So all of these are aspects that need to be taken care of between employers and employees way in advance to say, what are we going to do on this particular day? It's a very important day for the country. We're going to vote. However, the chances are that we may not vote the whole day. And therefore, can we make arrangement that, like petrol stations, like your retail stores, etc. So there has to be arrangements well in advance. But coming back to your question, an employee will be well within his rights to refuse to work on a public holiday because he's not giving the agreement, and the employer can't do anything, cannot even discipline that employee for that matter.
All right, Osborne, thanks very much indeed. Great seeing you again. I'm sure we'll have you in studio again in the near future. Thanks so much indeed for your time.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for the opportunity.
Okay.